Hey everyone, Andrew here. Real quickly before we get into the episode, I want to just give our thoughts and condolences to everyone currently being affected by the wildfires out in California and the Los Angeles area. It is extremely heartbreaking, absolutely just gut-wrenching and terrifying every time you open social media or you turn on the news to see these fires occurring right now, the thousands of people that are currently without their homes, the people that have lost businesses, the hundreds of thousands, I believe now, that have had to evacuate at some point. We just hope everyone is okay. We're wishing all of our biggest condolences and our support to all of our friends currently living in the LA area that are impacted by this. I have some family myself that lives in that area, and I am just rooting for them to get through this, and that we are all rooting behind you. We are going to include some donations and some resources in the description of this episode if you want to help contribute to supporting the firefighters that are helping out and helping contain this fire and helping out people that have been displaced. We are just offering our support, and we just wanted to show our support and our condolences before we talk about this silly little Space Galaxy show.
You're listening to For the Republic, a love letter to Star Wars animation.
Hello there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to For the Republic, a love letter to Star Wars animation. It is Andrew and Donovan back here once again. We're here to talk about episode 3 and 4 of Skeleton Crew. You might be wondering, hey, didn't episode 7 just drop? Isn't that the most recent one? Yes, we're very aware. We are very aware, and we apologize. But we did not want to just not cover half the show, because I personally have been adoring this series, and I want to talk about it. But just quick housekeeping real quick. We've been of course, as soon as we come back, it happens again, and we just get I got sick again, then you got sick, then you had some family stuff come up. My house has been like dealing with some stuff too, so it's just like, oh my god, like can we catch a break? And it's just like every time we've had something scheduled, it's been one of us had to pull out. So
nothing says like interruptions like a chunk of your house getting flooded.
Yeah. And in my case, 3 people in the house getting pneumonia. So it's just like, whoops, it's like happy holidays. Here's all this fun crap. So we're starting off 2025 with a bang, but we're going to not talk about Skeleton Crew. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing 3 double episodes for the remainder of this series. I did a quick little update thing that I'll post prior to this going out. We just recorded that prior to this. So if you did not watch that, we're going to be covering these 2 episodes together. Then in a couple days, we'll be talking about episode 5 and 6. And then after the finale drops on Tuesday, when we're recording this, episode 7 and 8 we will do together. And we can talk about some things that happened and how the show just got dark. It's gonna be interesting talking about these episodes and like specifically like Jod knowing things that happened in episode 7 and having to be like, oh man, I hope he doesn't turn on these kids. Like, you know, it's just gonna be.
I mean, I thought he would. Okay, not to get too far ahead, but
I thought he expected it. But
I thought he might. I thought he might do something. I didn't think it would go that direction. Dave Filoni wasn't kidding when he said that this show was a kid show in the same vein that the Clone Wars is. It was not afraid to get dark and uncomfortable.
I was waiting for it, and it still caught me off guard. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh yes,
yeah, but.
I mean, props to Jude Law, man. Like, we're going to talk about it more, but he has been a fantastic presence, and it's great. It's great to see him kind of disappear into this, like just really embody this character of Jod. Like, you know, because as we're going to say, he's able to like convey someone who's very likable, but also like it's got that kind of Hondo effect where he's very likable and he's got a very clear personality, but he's also very clearly dangerous and capable of turning on like a coin flip. And it's really, depending on how much money is involved.
Alex Damon had one of my favorite jokes in his most recent episode was just like, oh, he's become a full pirate, and not the fun kind like Hondo and Rebels, the scary kind like Hondo and the Clone Wars. I'm like, yeah, you know what?
Is no longer profitable.
Yeah. So again, we'll get to that when we get to that. But we had a lot of fun stuff to talk about because these 2 episodes, we got to go back a couple weeks, but they were really solid, as I think in my mind the entirety of this show has been. I feel like it's gotten better with almost every episode, and it's just been really consistent and really. I hinted at when we did our premiere coverage like a month ago at this point, so we're going back in time a little bit, but I was like, I feel like just with how it felt those first couple days after that premiere dropped, where it just felt refreshing. And as we're a month deep into the show now, it really does feel like this is the show that Star Wars needed at this time. I can't even think, like, when we were talking about the Acolyte and all the other shows for the most part, but like mainly the Acolyte, there was that 1 or 2 things a week that would be the big talking point that people would be getting upset about, whether it be Kiadi Mundi or Fire in Space or Lesbian Space Witches. You can keep going.
Or cutting your hair with a lightsaber.
Yeah. There's been, oh my God, I forgot about that. There's been so little of that. Maybe it's just because I've been detached from both Twitter and Blue Sky. Like, I still use them, but I'm not like doom scrolling anymore. So I haven't like seen it. But the only thing I've seen was, I think specifically for this episode that we're going to be talking about, episode 3, is people try to be like, KB's moms are gay. And then like no one cared. So they just like moved on. So like there's been very little of that.
I mean, it's probably because a bunch of them are like too busy like arguing with like the owner of Twitter because they found out he's not actually their friend and just some like billionaire asshole who will just exploit them.
Who would have guessed that? Too busy wanting to take Greenland and the Panama Canal and
wanting to invade my neck of the woods. Like
exactly. What is going on? This is not a serious country. Anyways, we'll talk about that at another point. But I do want to, again, just briefly give a quick little golf clap. Again, I did this in the premiere. I'm going to do it again. You've gone 7 weeks now without harassing child actors. So, kudos. As far as I'm aware, I haven't personally seen it. There's probably been some people that are like, oh, that elephant kid sucks. But, like, I haven't seen it. So you've been respectful, and this has gone over way better than I was expecting. And it's just been, like I said, just a breath of fresh air. Like, we're always going to have, because we're so glued into the Star Wars community, you're going to have projects where every project is going to be someone's favorite, whether that be the High Republic, whether that be any of the shows we've covered, whether that be any of the films, and you're always going to see love for those particular things as you're looking and as you're talking to friends and as you're making connections. It's been so nice, and I haven't really seen, like, Bad Batch, we got some of it, but it wasn't, I think, to this level. But Andor, the vibe was just, let's just enjoy a good show. And I feel like it's been the same for Skeleton Crew. Like, it hasn't been like these intense debates. It hasn't been, at each other's throats. It's just been like chill, kind of low key, kind of just a nice watch. And I think it's exactly what the show, or the franchise, has needed. And I hope that we get to continue onwards with it going forward. But before we get into episode 3 and 4, let's do something that we haven't done in a while. And that is our little segment that we like to call the Jedi Archives.
Perhaps the archives are incomplete.
It's been a little bit since we've done an archives here. So we can kind of call this, I guess, season 2 of the Jedi Archives, because I pulled the entire graphic up. So now we're making a new one, folks. If you're new to this podcast, or if you're unfamiliar with this segment, this is essentially our podcast Hall of Fame. What we do is we each nominate anything Star Wars related, and then we put it up to a poll. We'll put that poll up on our social media. We'll link it out shortly after this episode drops, and then you, that's right, you, the viewers and listeners, can vote on what gets inducted into the archives this week. It's been a bit since our last time, so I just want to say real quickly, because we haven't been able to really talk about it since then, because we haven't had an archive segment since, but we are indeed putting in, as an honorary member, James Earl Jones, who a couple months back sadly did pass away, of course. Not just the voice of Darth Vader, who's brought the most iconic villain in cinema history to screen for almost 50 years. He was Mufasa. He was in so many different movies and shows, and he was such a talented guy. And to leave us, even when he was in his 90s, it still hurt. Like, he had been retired for a couple of years at this point, but it was just like, when it happened, I was like, I am not okay. And I'm sad that we didn't get to talk about it as it happened. I did put some posts up when it did on our socials. But it was a shock. And I have yet to revisit any of the films since his passing in full. But there's gonna be that little thing that happened when we lost Carrie, and to a lesser extent Peter Mayhew and Kenny Baker, where it's just like, oh, like, this is, they're not here anymore.
Yeah, these building blocks of the Star Wars family.
Yeah. So rest in peace to James Earl Jones. Our condolences to his family. I know, like I said, we're a couple months late here, but we did want to honor one of the founding fathers and essential pieces of Star Wars at some point in our Star Wars podcast. So, of course, we're going to pay tribute to James here. And when we've lost Carl Weathers and Ray Stevenson, we put them as honorary members of the archives, and we're going to do the same for James here. So rest in peace, King.
I was just going to say about James Earl Jones, I think that it's safe to say that he has probably one of the most iconic voices in cinema. Like, just like you said, his voice is like, the fact that they were able to find him and just give him give this presence to Darth Vader. Like, it's like, he was also very humble about it, and that's something that is always so incredible, that he, so much of Vader's menace can be attributed to that voice, but he was always very humble and always wanted to share the load of it with David Prowse and the other other performers who physically portrayed Vader. And it's amazing to see that kind of humbleness in a performer, especially when they are given so much praise. Like, his voice is so singularly iconic, and I think for yours, my generation particularly, the fact that he was also Mufasa in The Lion King, and for other generations of him, being in Conan the Barbarian and Coming to America, all these, he when he shows up, he's one of those actors that has. America. Oh, have you not seen Coming to America?
I have seen it. I forgot to mention it.
Oh yeah, no, I've only seen it the once, but it's the kind of thing where he comes into the frame, and it's he has one of those iconic presences that you just instantly know that it's him. And it's even after like you said, years, decades, he was still coming back to voice Darth Vader. It's such a gift. Like people like to complain about the Disney era of Star Wars and stuff. It is such a gift.
That we got him in Rebels and Rogue One.
He got to come, he got to come back for Rebels and for Rogue One, and just I remember watching Rogue One and hearing him start to talk to director Krennic, and it was specifically the line where he says, "You seem unsettled," and I shiver ran through my whole body, because I was like, oh my god, it's Darth Vader. This is incredible. I never thought I'd hear James Earl Jones as Darth Vader in a Star Wars movie again, and here we are.
The fact that he has my favorite line delivery in the entire franchise, which is the beginning of the fight with Luke and Empire. It's a the Force is strong with you, young Skywalker, but you are not a Jedi yet. Just
so good.
It's my favorite line delivery in any movie ever. It is so peak. And of course, this clip was going around after his passing. I'm not a fan of the show. I don't like The Big Bang Theory, but that cameo of let me get you like Star Wars.
You like Star Wars.
I like Star Wars too. It's a great scene.
I have soured so much of The Big Bang Theory. I still like that episode because it's such a great joke, and like James Earl Jones was so like up for like the kind of stuff that they like put him through, like with Sheldon Cooper, and like the bit with Carrie Fisher as well, like where he prank calls her house. It's not funny anymore, James. Then why am I laughing? He's such an iconic presence in Hollywood, and it is going to be such a shame, even like you said, even at like in his 90s that we have lost him now. It really hurts still.
Absolutely. So rest in power to an absolute icon, and you'll always be in our hearts here at For the Republic. But to, like I said, shift to my nomination. We're going to bring things a little bit more happy and majestic, and I'm going to go with, I could have gone with something from the episodes we're covering. I could have gone with something from the most recent episodes. I'm going to instead go for something covering the broad entirety of Skeleton Crew, which I think has been one of the most essential standouts to this series so far, which has been Mick Giacchino's score. That is my nomination here.
Yes.
Absolute shout out. First of all, having an incredible year. He scored The Penguin, which is just unbelievable. I have not finished it yet, but I am 4 episodes deep, and it is one of my favorite DC shows I've seen. It is. I still need to watch
that. I haven't seen the Batman. I'm waiting to watch the Batman and go through it. But yeah,
the Batman is
really good.
Batman is top 5 for me, I think, upon rewatch. And then scoring this, which I remember now, I think Rogue One's score, which his dad, the legendary Michael Giacchino, did, I think has grown in appreciation over time. But I remember when the movie first came out, the one thing people weren't fully
on board with,
was that score, because if you remember, it was very late in development he was brought on. I don't remember. I think it was Alexander Desplat was the original.
It was, it was.
And then he had to leave, and then they brought in Giacchino like 2 months before the movie came out. So I remember, because there were people just like, oh, it didn't stand out. There was the why don't you play the Imperial March when the Empire shows up? Or why don't you play the Force theme when you talk about the Jedi? Like things that we've had these conversations in various things, like as recently as Kenobi, like when Vader would show up, like, why aren't they playing the Imperial March? And then when they finally played it in the finale, they were like, oh, well, there we go. But I remember those being like actual conversations that we were having in 2016, 9 years ago. That's disgusting. By the way, happy 10 year to The Force Awakens this year, and happy 20 to Revenge of the Sith. It's crazy. And people are already making the fucking jokes. I'm like, stop right now. Can we just celebrate things, please? Anywho, this score has been fantastic. There have been like Jyn, like I said, over time, like Jyn Erso's suite, I think is just beautiful. The Guardians of the Wills theme, I think, has always been exceptional. Like, there are so many great tracks from that Rogue One score that I think over time people have been like, yeah, no, this is actually really good. Because I don't think anyone's ever been like, yeah, Michael Giacchino isn't a good composer. Like, he's excellent. It was just, we need to warm up to this a little bit because it was so fastly put together. But I think it's held up over time quite well. Skeleton Crew. And I talked about the whimsy and childlike awe of the premiere, and especially these earlier episodes before we got a little dark, but it's still there. And a lot of that has to do with Giacchino's excellent score throughout this series so far. The main theme and the motif for the kids, I think, is excellent. The credits theme has really grown on me.
Oh,
I love it. I look
listening to
forward
that nonstop. I was like, by the third episode, which we're going to talk about, I was like literally like listening to it like while I was like doing stuff, just like it's such a like a bop, really. Like it implies like this kind of like trek, this journey through the galaxy, and there's this, like you said, there's this whimsy, in those keys, those gentle piano keys that hit during like the overlay into the titles. It's great, but it's got that haunted quality a little bit, that hint of danger with the advent of the pirates and certain characters. It's so cool.
It perfectly balances the aesthetic and the vibe and the inspiration of the coming of age project the show is based off of and inspired by, and also has that feel of wonder and whimsy of the original trilogy. Like I don't think that many of the other Disney Plus scores have done. A lot of them have been excellent, but in just this feels like something you'd hear in like Return of the Jedi. And
it's got that kind of vibe.
It does. And I've just loved it. And I've had this idea in mind for the archives since our last recording. So I just finally wanted to get Mick Giacchino's score nominated. So that, a little long-winded, that is my pick for the archives. What do you got for us?
Okay, so my nomination for this week's archives is going to be SM33, because I batted around a few other ideas, but I was just like, I've got to represent my guy SM33 here. Like, we have been so overdue a pirate droid in Star Wars, and Nick Frost did not disappoint with that voice. Like, and
can't say I love no At Attin.
It's so good. Like he's just brilliant, and I love that he's this like rickety old droid with like the sound effects, and I love the sound effects that come into like when he is reactivated and starts back up. Like gives him this kind of like somewhat edgy presence, and like it's great that he's able to have this kind of like I was reminded he's like a more dangerous version of Martin Short's Ben from the Treasure Planet film, where like there's a crazy to him and unhingedness, but there is such a funny side as well. Like we're obviously we're going to talk about episode 5 at a later time, but like his whole thing around the hotel is hilarious, and the moment he tries to intimidate Jod and peers back around the corner and goes, it was great. It made me think of the credits of the first Deadpool film, where like Deadpool pokes his head around the corner and goes. It's like those kind of vibes. Yeah, like SM33, great for a droid as well with the Smee name. He's just such a perfect pirate thing, and I love him. He's another like home run for Disney with their droid characters. I honestly don't think there's a single droid character that they've missed, and I'm even including Dio there, because I didn't like Dio the time I watched The Rise of Skywalker, but the little dude's grown on me. So yeah, SM33 is my pick.
Yeah, no, I agree with pretty much everything you said there. Droids have been consistent home run hitters, I would say, in this era, and I think all forms of media, like games, shows, movies, like they've all been essentially BD1 has been incredible. That would be I was thinking of doing a droid, like Disney droid ranking at some point. I would have got to think about who I would have. I mean, 33 is up there for me. Like K2 and Chopper are always like my go-to picks, but 33 he's growing on me. So those are our picks this week for the archives. We'll put this up on our social media shortly after this episode drops, and you can decide between Mick Giacchino's score for the series and SM33, a battle of the Clash of the Titans for our first.
Can't say I remember no At Attin.
Oh, we're going to be saying that a lot as we get through this episode. But first, we need to talk about episode 3, titled very interesting as an astrogation problem. I love, first of all, I was a little at first like, oh, what are these titles? I love that they're just quotes from the episode, but they fit so well for the majority of the fact. But then when you read this one, you're like, what the hell does that and then you figure it out. This is the episode that really to me was them showing off, hey, look at these matte paintings and these practical effects and these sets. We're going to make this show look so 80s, but so good at the same time. Because that moon planet, at first I was like, this is going to look a little TV budget, isn't it? But then, like, when we get to that shot of them, like, the silhouettes of them just walking down the moon, I'm like,
yeah.
Oh my God, so
it's iconic
good.
Almost. Like it's just
almost,
so good. Like it's got that Star Wars vibe, and yet it's so different. It really kind of like sums up. I almost feel like that's a tip of the hat to like even the Amblin logo with E.T. and Elliot silhouetted against the moon. It's just got its own kind of like it tips its hat to that Amblin era, but it's also got that Star Wars flavor that we all love. It's just, yeah, the matte paintings incidentally have looked fantastic. And I'm going to go so far as to say, I think this might be the best use of the volume that we have seen in a Star Wars show on Disney Plus. Like, because I've been a volume defender pretty much. I've not been as hard on like the volume as other people have in the community. I understand why it was made. It looked a little bit off for people during Obi-Wan and parts of The Mandalorian, but I really feel like Skeleton Crew has used it to real effect here. Like just fantastic. Like the images that we've been kind of given, like the moon, like you said, and the space station that Jod and the kids like break out of at the start of the episode. They all, there's never a sense of like, oh, this is all just CGI. Like it actually kind of like, it did what it did for the first season of The Mandalorian, where I was genuinely kind of like, how are they doing all of this? Like, where are the seams here? Where does it end? Where does the set end and the volume begins? And that's a great trick to pull off once again.
I think Ahsoka like really turned a corner with the volume, because I was like Cetos and Peridia and Thrawn Star Destroyer. I was all this looks like a real set. Like, this looks really, really cool. There are some things, like a lot of the flashback stuff, I was like, from the volume.
Yeah.
Like, it turned the corner. This, I think, I agree, it is the best use of the volume, because I think they found the right way to use it. They found we're going to make this look a little different. We're going to make this look like one of those Amblin. Like, there's a reason I've loved the VHS stuff they've been using for the marketing, because realistically, if you put some filter on this, you make it 4:3, you put this on a VHS tape, a lot of the things in these early episodes you could put out and be like, yeah, no, I could definitely see this coming out in the 80s. They've really mastered the way of using this, and like different planets that we've been to, they all look really cool and really nice, and they've really mastered the visuals and the production value in this show, and it's been one of the many pleasant surprises I've had here. We do open up, we get our first, like, every couple episodes, and I've enjoyed the way that they occasionally will cut back to the parents. I do wish, because I really hyped up Carrie Condon in the show going into it, 7 episodes in, I do wish we got a little bit more of her. But it is nice to just catch up with the parents and get to meet KB's parents and the rest of Neel's family and see his dad still being like, not having the reaction I think he should have at this point.
It's so interesting to kind of go through each of the parents as well, though, because they again, this is where it kind of feels like it's tipping its hat to that whole 80s era of movies, not just the Amblin films, but a lot of the I can't believe I've just forgotten his name. Who did The Breakfast Club?
John Hughes.
Thank you, John Hughes films, which is perfect, because again, you know, we know that John Watts has a lot of fondness for that era as well, because, you know, he that was a main influence for him when he was working on his Spider-Man trilogy. And you know, for the few John Hughes films that I have seen, like including Beethoven, watching these parents, they felt like they had come out of a John Hughes film, because they had a very kind of like they're very likable, but they've also got that kind of like very down to earth, ordinary parents quality about them. They're not, there's not like some sinister thing with all of them, or like they're all these exceptional people. They're these parents who are just concerned about their kids, and they've got these worries that most parents would have. Like that scene about KB's parents just talking about her medical needs. It's incidentally great foundation laying for honestly one of the best moments in the whole series currently. I can't wait to talk about episode 6 and how we finally see KB step into the spotlight. But yeah, I loved all of them. I love seeing Neel's mum. She's so likable. Like the just like, and I also think like Wim's dad as well. Like he's like you said, he's got a very withdrawn quality, and I think there's a very unspoken thing, and we might hopefully get a bit of this in the finale. It feels like he is very emotionally withdrawn since the loss of Wim's mother, and I really hope that they kind of get into that, because I really feel like that's the way the actor is playing it. Like he is very much withdrawn into himself, and he doesn't know how to function now that his son has been taken away from him as well. It's such an interesting kind of performance, and I really hope they do that, because I feel like that would be giving the actor his due for certain.
Yeah, I hope you're correct, because he did have a really nice moment in episode 7 again. We're not talking about that right now. We're just talking about this episode. But I do feel like I'm not calling Wendell a bad dad. I'm not fully vibing with the way the actor is portraying this character, and I hope it comes full circle. It's just there's points where I feel like, you know, there are points like in a couple episodes from now where he's like kind of bumbling around at his job, and like that was funny, but there are just certain things where I'm just lacking that. But it is nice to get these little catch-ups with the parents every couple episodes to see how they react. You know, their kids disappearing, and further lay the foundation into how they're going to be able to get them home, because they get the droids telling them here, you know, it's out of our control. You know, you can't. The supervisor won't let any communication through the planet, and this was still in the, you know, what's the deal with that Attin? Like
those droids, man. The interesting thing about the droids for me is that they also kind of are like communicating the like overall aesthetic of At Attin, which is it's a planet that is very sheltered. It's a very kind of a great metaphor, not just for the American suburbs, but also how like people like suburban areas, how sheltered they are from like the more dangerous parts of well, in this case, like the galaxy, with like how with just the general danger and the pirates that are like abounding. So the fact that they're all this, they're very kind of thin and almost spindly, but they're still very kind of authoritarian. It's it's really great design work. Like again, the production design for this has also been great, and I think that's another thing that's really benefited the show. You know, we mentioned earlier about the volume. I think something that's really helped as well is like the fact that the ILM, you know, have had Phil Tippett being involved again with the matte paintings. Like one of ILM's, it's one of my favorite behind the scenes stories that one of ILM's old matte painters came out of retirement, someone who worked on the original trilogy, to draw matte paintings for this. That is so cool. That's one of the coolest like bits of trivia about this show.
Yeah, no, that is an excellent bit of trivia, and you can like really tell that he, like, Phil Tippett's fingertips are all over this show.
Oh yeah,
and it's just a great little thing. As we go back to the pirate port, we get Jod kind of helping them out escape from the port, and then they have the whole little thing, and then they're like, "Oh no, we got to go back for 33," and like this is like a very like kid thing, like, oh, we can't leave the little droid behind. So he's just like, "God damn it, I'll be right back."
I have to say about Jod immediately, like looking back at this, like with the hindsight of the later episodes, his performance, the way Jude Law plays those scenes is so interesting. The little smile he does when Fern kind of calls him out on him kind of BSing them about being a Jedi. There's such a little, there's an element of like real frustration behind that smile where, you know, he wants to be able to just tell these kids to shut up and he wants to be able to just take the ship and just do what he wants, but he can't. These kids have a lot over him currently. They own the ship, and if he can't keep them on side, then he is screwed. So it's so interesting to watch him kind of play that, and it's also it also adds to the comedy as well of like that early scene when he's breaking them out and they're having the exchanges and he's just saying sort of stuff that someone who isn't acquainted with Jedi would think is something a Jedi would say, like, oh, the Force provided, that felt natural, but when he was like, the Force flows through us all, I was like, I'm not buying it, Jordan. I know for sure Fern isn't, and I kind of just say, I love that about Fern, that she immediately sniffs him out, that she's like, no, this guy isn't a Jedi. And Wim, bless his little heart.
Bless Wim's heart.
He so wants to believe that Jod is a Jedi. It's such a gutting thing to watch him like be so crushed with the realization later on that he has not actually met a Jedi, but instead just like a pirate.
Yeah, no. I mean, Fern's the captain. Like, she's just... I love how just like, nope, I'm not falling for this, you work for me kind of thing that they have. But then we get, going back in here, we get one of my favorite little cameos of the season, which is when John is working to fix SM-33. You get this alien creature coming like, oh, Silva, how you doing?
Oh, I thought you were talking about the battle droid.
Oh,
did we win?
Did we win? Oh,
I love that. I literally.
But then
it's so good.
I couldn't put my finger on it. I'm like, who is that? Why are they lingering on this alien for so long? Come to turn the credits on, it's freaking Alfred Molina. I'm like, oh my god,
Dr. Octopus himself
in the show. It is just great. It's a great design. And then, of course, they figure out, god damn it, Silvo's out again, and
and it's such a great conversation, just like the way it's played, and it so greatly illustrates that like the pirates, as much as they're fond of one another, they are not trustworthy. They will betray each other at the drop of a hat. Like, this pirate comes in, he's got all this, like, he says, oh, you were the best skipper I ever had. And then the minute that he kind of twigs that Jod actually has broken out of jail and actually hasn't been freed by Brutus, he immediately is like, no, I'm gonna call the guards. Let's have a little chat and all that kind of stuff. And also, again, this is props to the writing. Thank goodness they didn't try and even pretend like we hadn't figured out that Jod was Captain Silvo.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that they treated the audience with that level of intelligence of like, no, we're going to be upfront with it. He's Captain Silvo. It's more interesting if we kind of keep it that way, because it does that Die Hard thing where, we know some stuff that the kids don't, just as Jod knows some stuff just as Jod knows stuff that the kids the kids don't, the kids know stuff that Jod doesn't, but we the audience are in on this, so it kind of keeps things exciting in a way. Like, we're excited to see how the kids will react to Jod being the former pirate captain. It's an interesting reveal, and it gives us all these like nice little like twists on stuff to ensure that Jod doesn't just like fit into like a prior Star Wars mold. Like, there's a bit of Obi-Wan in there, like when he creates the noise with the Force and distracts people, which I really appreciated. And some of the advice he kind of gives and his sense of humor, there's a little bit of Obi-Wan there, but also there's plenty of like Darth Vader-ish elements in a sense, like, or Hondo, like, or the fact that he is
Solo.
And Han Solo as well. Like, the fact that he mentions Parsec is just very funny as well. Like, when they're just interacting, and I love that Fern. Just, again, that line where, like, she says, oh, well, you can do anything, right? Because you're a Jedi. And he just grins and he goes, he's like, yeah, of course. And what he's really thinking is, you got me there. I'll go save your blasted droid, your criffing droid.
Yeah. It's so good. I just love all this early stuff. Then we have that little escape, and there's, of course, like, the damn cable's not getting off the ship, and then you have our first taste of the kids using the gun for the ship.
Yeah,
it's when we're really just like, we're getting some proper Star Wars like ship battles, but it's from the perspective of like, closest thing I could think of was when Rey and Finn first fly the Falcon in The Force Awakens. Of like, they're just figuring out as it goes.
Well, there's a reference to that coming later, which I'm very
then there's just, there's that a couple times in this episode where they're seeing things in Star Wars for the first time that are like, we all know, like, oh, that's an X-wing, that's that's a ship. And like, oh, this is how you fly in the cockpit. But they're like, what the hell is this? And it's like, oh, there's Kh'ymm's goons, and it's just like, I love how it turns things on its head. And utilizes these familiar aspects of Star Wars, but uses them in a way that it elicits a different reaction. And I think that's just been really cool.
And again, that's like, that goes along with like Jod's portrayal as well. Like, really, we should want the X-Wings to catch Jod and the kids, but we kind of don't, because Jod, again, is set up as very likable, very amusing, and fitting into a potentially, the fact that we don't know a lot about him, we kind of want him and the kids to stay together because we know the kinds of stories that usually play out here, especially with the era that this is like paying homage to. So it kind of, like you said, it very brilliantly turns the whole like starfighter chase on its head by having the X-Wings go right into the role that the TIE fighters usually do. It's really cool. Just to take it back to like that whole segment with the space station, I have to also mention that hilarious shot of the kids all arguing about how much of a Jedi Jod is, and meanwhile that whole like little battle with the kind of like little ship dinghies with the plastic coverings is just like going on in the background. It's very funny.
Yeah, no, that was great. Now I just so many things in these early episodes just were just so amusing. When we get to Jod, like, oh, I've got a contact that can help us out. And at this point, like I said, Fern's not buying it. Whim is fully, whether or not he like truly believes it, he's like, no, he needs to be a Jedi. And then because of that, Neel is also like, well, I guess he's a Jedi, because at this point, Neel is like not separating himself from Whim too much. And then KB's just
Whim even
we
like
have to trust
the vote for him. Whim says, oh yeah, Neel's with me. Like he just assumes that Neel will back him up no matter what. And it's like, it's so interesting, like just seeing the dynamics of the kids here. Like they're still kids, but they've just got their own little like dynamics with each other that's just really interesting.
Give my son a vote, Whim. What the hell are you doing? So at this point, John's like,
damn it, as well.
I know. Like, what the heck?
Like that whole sustained shot, I was like when like I rewatched it earlier today, and I was just like, again, it's great like foreshadowing, because Jod is just coming over here. He's eaten from a whole bowl, and he doesn't even even consider the kids. The kids are just like staring at him for a whole sustained thing, and it takes like it takes poor Neel's tummy rumbling for him to just go. And even then, he doesn't get them food. He's like, "There's more in the pot." And again, Jude Law plays that very funny, but it also belies just how selfish a character Jod is.
In this show, I've loved Jude Law for so long. He has ate this role up, and it's been so good. This is the same episode, because I'm like, it's been a bit, so I'm refreshing my mind. So this is the episode where Jod's kind of exploring the ship, and he finds like the dagger and the skeleton, and like grabs it, and then 33 comes out of the corner. That was great. Is this also the same episode where KB like can't sleep, and like Jod catches her, and they have that little conversation?
Yeah, because you have that brilliant match like cut from Fern saying, "I'm not even tired." Cut to her immediately falling asleep. It's great. Like, and
it is one of the most Fern lines in this whole show.
And Neel, his little the little noise he makes with his trunk while he's snoring, it's adorable, man. He needs to be protected at all costs.
He does. He becomes a little warrior in the next episode we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But at this point, Jod's like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to take you to my friend. She knows a lot about maps, and she can help you out." And then this is where we get those.
Were you getting a bit worried there, Andrew? Like when Jod turned around and said to the kids, just as a warning, she may stab us in the back. I was like, I won't lie. A feeling of dread swept through me, and I was like, oh God, if this is Sid, Andrew is not going to stop with it. Andrew is going to lose his mind.
Didn't use a name right away, right?
Yeah, it made it sound like I did think that it might be an established character who was his contact. I'm so glad that it was Kh'ymm, that we were introduced to Kh'ymm. She is great.
They showed restraint twice in this episode, where we haven't had many Mandoverse connections. It's literally just been Vane. Like, that's all we've had so far.
And he's barely in the show. Like we all thought he would just head up the pirates.
Yeah,
but it's not. He's just another henchman. He's just he is like
one of
Turk in the
dudes. He's not even like the third or fourth. Yeah, he's not even like the third or fourth most important pirate like in that group. It's like Brutus
Jaleel White,
White, and then the one.
So happy he's here.
Yeah, the one, the older woman that's like always saving Jod from getting thrown out the brig, and then the poor dude that died in episode 7. R.I.P. We'll get to you.
Oh yeah, like the Quarren.
Yep. But they showed restraint because they could have had Kh'ymm be an established character. They could have also had the X-Wing pilot at the end of the episode easily be Carson Teva. Easily could have been Carson Teva.
I
thought it was too. When I was listening to the voice, I'm like, is that him? And it wasn't. So I was just like, okay, cool. We're like not pushing it yet, which I've actually enjoyed.
Oh yeah, totally.
We meet Kh'ymm, and immediately, instant great design. Like, instantly new iconic Star Wars creature. I love the fact that she's like this owl cat hybrid kind of thing. The voice is perfect. You got her like brilliant library. It reminded me a lot of the library episode from Avatar: The Last Airbender, where it's also a sentient owl running the library. It was just such a cool looking environment and location. And again, shout out to the volume in this episode.
I was reminded a bit of the owl from Power Rangers Time Force kind of when I saw her. I can't remember the name of it because that was like the first circuit from Power Rangers Time Force. Like I'll send you an image, Andrew, later on, but like it was maybe the eyes, but like that really kind of took me back to like late 90s watching Power Rangers when I was a kid. That was like her design is so. She feels so Star Wars in her alien design. And Alia Shawkat, again, great voice. So like quirky, and the fact that she does the bird noises as well. And that she's got that kind of brusque relationship with Jod. Quiet, Jack. Crimson Jack.
Crimson Jack. We get the start reference of this being like a little running gag throughout the show of almost every episode. Jod has a new alias. But a great reference to a bounty hunter from the original Star Wars Marvel run all the way back in 1977 or 78, who has been brought back. He was in the Galactic Star Cruiser comics. Remember that thing? That totally went over well. But he was in those in the sequel trilogy era, and it's if you've seen the art of this character, very clearly is not Jod. So it just shows again the suspicion of who is this guy really, and what's his deal? What are his true intentions? Can he be trusted? And we get a lot of that.
I mean,
in this,
she literally says straight up. Kh'ymm literally says straight up that this guy's bad news. He's going to betray you. You can't trust him. And we were all like, no, we've seen it. We've seen the Amblin films. We've seen these kind of films before. We know how it's going to go. Kh'ymm, don't tell us what to think. And then, but now that we're at approaching the finale, kind of feel like we should all have listened to her.
Maybe should have listened to Kh'ymm. We thought we were hardened with what happened with Sid, and we were like, we can deal with this again. Maybe we can't. Maybe we simply just can't. But there was such great setup in this scene too, because as soon as they're walking in and they realize that he's Jod, Kh'ymm immediately has someone call for backup and sends in those X-Wings, and she's essentially stalling the entire time. But we do get like some serious lore dump here. We get the jewels of the Old Republic are name dropped for the first time. We get more of this next week, which I loved. Such a great name and getting these connections to the Old Republic, but an aspect of the Old Republic that, as far as I'm aware, we've never seen before. And this
I don't think we have. No, I'm pretty light on Old Republic lore, but this felt very new to me, and I really like that they're adding to the lore and the Old Republic rather than just like pulling from established stuff, because we've got projects for upcoming projects for that, and I love that we are like properly tying in the Old Republic era now, because like when Kathleen Kennedy rolled out all those different eras, there was a project for at least each era, but the Old Republic was weirdly kind of like absent from the lineup of projects, and I was like, well, when are we doing something with that? And I'm really glad that Skeleton Crew is actually keying into that,
giving us
you
stuff.
also mentioned you also mentioned Mick Giacchino's score. I love the theremin music that is used for Kh'ymm's lair and the planet. It's so cool. We've never heard that.
Never heard it in Star Wars, but it works so well.
And it sounds so very different to what was done with the Loki show. Incidentally, that composer Natalie Hall went on to do Obi-Wan. And I just love that Mick is able to do such different things with the theremin, just to kind of communicate that, not so much the alienness, but the whimsy and the kind of mystery surrounding like the Jewels of the Old Republic, and like the ending shot where she turns around like to see where the ship left for hyperspace and saying, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me, and the way that starts back up, you're like, what is the deal with those planets? And that music really accentuates that mystery. It's really cool.
Yeah. So we get her, she's able to, like I said, narrow it down somewhat of where At Attin could be. And it's like, oh yeah, how many we got? Thousands? And the kids are like, thousands? I thought there was only one planet this whole time. And it's just so, I love seeing this new take on kids. Like, we've had Luke and Anakin and Rey and Ezra and all these different characters growing up on this one planet and exploring the wider galaxy and having that introductory feel of experiencing Star Wars and experiencing a galaxy far, far away for the first time. I love that these kids are turning in a way of like, literally, we didn't know any of this existed. Like Rey was like, oh, I thought Luke was a myth, but like she was aware of the wider galaxy. These kids are just like, what the hell is an X-Wing? What the hell is another planet? You're telling me there's thousands of these fucking things? Like, it's just so great seeing these things in this new way. And again, when the marketing for the show was happening and we saw the Suburbia stuff, I was like, this is different. And I don't know if I like it. But then halfway through episode 1, I was like, this is intentional and I like it. So like, it definitely pays off in these first 3 episodes where we literally don't know what At Attin is and what the deal is, because, you know, we can't say we remember. We literally cannot say we remember no At Attin.
Can't say I remember no At Attin.
But we get what Kh'ymm thinks is the coordinates, gives them to Jod and KB, and at this point, Jod's like, "You're stalling, aren't you?"
Yep.
And we get that moment with the X-Wings, and get rid of Kh'ymm's goons, and it's just seeing X-Wings referred to as goons. It's like, we've accidentally gotten a villain perspective Star Wars series or episode, and it's just like, whoops, it's the cutest kids you'll ever see in Jude Law. So it's just like,
it adds like so some dark humor to the whole thing of like, Wim, he's got the turret and he's just missing those X-Wings, because it's like, if he had been any more accurate, he would have killed an innocent pilot. And it's just, it's that kind of thing. It's so messed up in terms of a situation. I'm amazed that it's made it into the show. Like this dark humor of these poor kids like being manipulated into shooting at X-Wings of all things. It's hilarious.
So great. But after this happens, we do get Jod kind of admitting, like, so you're not a Jedi, and he's just like, I mean, I never said I was. You said it for me.
Yeah, you can see that moment. Like the moment he says it, Wim's heart just breaks. And the way that the young actor plays that, it's just the kids across the board have been brilliant in the show. Like they're so good. They there's a lot being asked of them here in terms of the kind of emotions they have to get across here. And like, Ravi K. Conyers as Wim, he's so good, like at portraying that kind of like naivete of the character, but keeping him very likable. Because Wim has to do a lot of petulant things sometimes, like when the ship, like as we've seen in the trailers, when like John gives the ship over, the controls over to Neel, like you can see Wim in the background going, Neel.
Yeah.
It's so adorable and funny. Like I love these kids. I want to see them in other Star Wars projects. I hope this isn't the last we see of them. I hope that it's I hope it's like Vivian Lyra Blair and they're just they continue to be treated really well by the fandom because they absolutely just deserve everything with this franchise. They're
really could make this like Star Wars: Stranger Things if you wanted to.
And I think
you very well could. I think you very well could, and we will have these discussions as we keep going. But I don't think you. I mean, you could stop here, but I mean, if you got more stories, and
please don't.
Ford have said you do. Come on, just you don't need 8,000 million viewers per episode to give us a second season of a show.
But you already burned us with the Acolyte, damn it. We deserve a season 2 of at least one show.
One show. Come on. Give us one that wasn't just immediately greenlit when the show started. Just one. Come on. That's all I'm asking.
Like we've got Andor and Ahsoka. Can we at least have one more, please?
One more, please.
Who am I kidding? I still want Obi-Wan season 2, damn it.
Yeah, I would like a lot of things. But we'll see what happens after the finale. But this is where we kind of get that agreement of, we're going to work together because, you'll get a little percentage. We'll have a little agreement, but you can get us home. But you're going to be working for us, which that it sets up some great dynamics for the next couple episodes. And we get the little theremin bit at the end, and then we cut into our next episode. Again, really solid episode. Crazy revisiting it like after a month, but this was David Lowery's second directorial effort of the season. It was another really solid one. It really added a lot more to, now we're in the wider galaxy. Kh'ymm was great. I loved the escape from the pirate port, the whole sequence. Alfred Molina, of course, just throw him in random things and you'll always win in my mind. And I love the little lore drops. And it sets up brilliantly for a lot of stuff we see next episode.
It's very fitting that he was brought on for this, David Lowery, especially considering that he had just directed the Peter Pan and Wendy film for Disney that also had Jude Law as Captain Hook. Like that's just brilliant, really.
Brilliant casting. But now we move into the fourth episode, fittingly titled, hold on.
Can't say I remember no At Attin.
There we go. Get ready to hear that a bunch during coverage.
Baby, let's go.
So, episode 4, fittingly titled, Can't Say I Remember No At Attin, was, at the time of the release, my favorite episode of the series. It's since been surpassed twice, but it was such a solid episode. Who knew that having the Daniels direct a Star Wars show, two people that directed one of the best movies of the decade, would make a compelling, character-driven episode of Star Wars television? Who would have guessed that would have worked?
It's like, I mean, I love Everything Everywhere All at Once just so much.
Fantastic.
It's like a perfect film. So I was so excited when they were announced as coming on board, and I was so interested to see what kind of like stuff they were going to throw at these kids, and the answer, as it turned out, was more kids. This was really good. This was another high mark for me. This episode. Again, and we also got like an iconic moment already with the bit where Jude Law, where Jod is surrounded by the Troiks, and he just goes, you know what, just shoot me. It's just like I laughed at that. That was like so good. It's so good, and it you know what, it just sums up like
good.
It sums up 2024 when it comes to like politics, man. Like, geez.
It's like the perfect action meme just dropped. It's perfect. But we got a lot of bombs in this episode. We got the reveal of another like twin planet, which at first I was like, what are we going for here? And then you realize more and more that it's like all the jewels of the Old Republic are kind of like mirrors of one another, which I think is really sick. And then we get child armies. We get two warring clans. You could I could make another Avatar reference. I could make a Romeo and Juliet reference. I could make literally like thousands of different references here.
It's literally it's almost like a good version of that episode of Avatar where Aang has to like deal with the two tribes that are like being really petulant with each other, and it gets so tiresome so quickly. But you like
Look,
here
it's
it
the
was
Great Divide.
Yeah,
let's keep flying. Best joke in the whole show.
Oh my god. Yeah, like I again, this was a really unique location, and like the idea of child soldiers, it's not something we've really delved into as much with Star Wars. We've sort of gone there with like the Jedi Padawans in the Clone Wars being forced into like to be commanders of actual armies, but this was a really cool thing. It had this kind of like again Goonies Amblin kind of vibe with these kids like fighting a war that they don't really understand, like whilst wearing all of this like ramshackle armor and stuff. It's really cool. It reminded me of a Doctor Who episode from 2008 that had a very similar premise of these two sides fighting a conflict. They don't actually understand the conflict, and the whole thing has been even distorted. It's a really cool like setup, and I love that we don't even like fully answer like what even the problem was, like what the divide was by the end.
It was literally like, oh, all we know about the conflict is like, oh yeah, he stole my Eope, so
and we got like a different version of Iope. We got some more Iopes. Like that was kind of cool. Like the kind of like the Aeolum Pokemon in the later Pokemon games. Yeah,
I saw or I heard the sound. I was like, what? Oh, we got a familiar creature here, boys. And then you see them. I'm like, they look a little bit different, and they got like the tendrils on their heads. It was just this was such a good episode. But we get to the planet, like, here we go, At Attin, and Jula was like, this is At Attin, and they slowly realize like this is not like, either we did some weird time dilation thing where it's like we went to a version of At Attin.
I did wonder that.
I thought, like, are we doing this? Like, are we going interstellar, like with Star Wars here, or as we eventually find out, it's a different planet. So the kids go out at Achrann, which at first I was like, I don't like this. But then, like, when we get more into the different names of the planets, and we find out they're all very similar in named, I'm like, okay, I'm vibing with it. I'm like, but first I was like, you're telling me that there's two planets that have almost the same name, that are almost the same. I'm like, Dave, what are we doing here? But then I was like, hold on a second, Dave, what are we doing here? And I was really enjoying it, even though I don't think Filoni is writing the show at all. So it's like, John Watts, what are we doing here? Any whoosies. You can also alternatively title this the Neel episode, because I was a very proud father in this episode. If you're watching this on video, you see it says Andrew, father of Neel. That is my son. Not only did my son, was he very brave in this episode, and he displayed a lot of courage. He had his cowardly lion moment. But also, my boy's got a girlfriend. That's my boy, first of all. Very proud father. But also, it was just every Neel. Like, the minute I realized that, oh, this is going to be a Neel episode, I was loving it. Yeah, and I think it's part of a reason why it was my favorite at this point, because it is so nice. But we get like that little moment because Jod has to stay on the ship with 33 while the kids go out and explore. And
I almost forgot about SM33's babysitting mode. Come here, baby. Come on, baby. Like, does he actually think John is a baby, or is he just calling him that derisively? I think it's the latter, personally.
I think it's the latter. But if it is the former, I think that might be funnier. But you see him just kind of exploring, and because at this point they don't know where they are, and KB's like, oh yeah, this is At Achrann, all right. I've been here. And Jula's like, At Achrann? Like, I thought this is At Attin. It's like, where is that? It's like, and then he drops the
I can't say I remember no At Attin.
You know, it's the running gag episode. But
I love that it's the same line as well. It's like the same recording of Nick Frost saying the line. Like, it's to show how automated it is. Like, when he's and it lays the groundwork again for like the fact that there's something tied to that. The fact that he can't remember any At Attin. Like, it's just, again, just really great attention to detail.
But we get introduced to the child war between the Troiks and the Hattans fighting over the Eopies, and we get introduced to Hayna, our character of the week, almost. But she's great.
She really is.
The one thing that I got a little was like, am I missing something? It was very similar to when Emphas Nest was first revealed in Solo, where they kind of linger on her, and the intention was, these Cloud Rider, these vicious Cloud Leaders, it was just like a teenage girl this whole time, showing the Empire is truly fuck them, and Crimson Dawn, fuck them. But in the theater, there were a couple people are we supposed to know who this is this a comic character that none of us know? When they cut to Hayna's dad, I had a very similar reaction am I supposed to know who this is? Because they kind of just linger on him. General Strix, very Star Wars name, very Star Wars.
Oh yeah, I almost expected him to be a former Imperial guy, which I kind of like that we don't know the backstory of him, whether these are people who actually lived on At Achrann, who have descended from people from the Old Republic, or if they're just people who landed there. It's really, I like that it makes the story feel bigger. Again, which is such a Star Wars staple of just giving us enough of a story just to suggest a bigger galaxy, a huge thing that we're only seeing one tiny part of. It's always great to be able to get that feel across.
Absolutely. And when we get their hideout, and we learn more about the general. I don't know if we can call him a villain per se, but he's definitely taking advantage of these kids.
Oh, for sure.
And it's here, let's use these kids to our advantage and use them as bait.
Give them guns and start
Give them guns.
Set them off to shoot and stuff. And I love the bit where Fern and Wim and KB are all just playing with the guns and stuff. Obviously they're
so great.
It's again, they're kids, and the show is willing to let them be kids at certain moments when they're able to.
Big weakness of a lot of media where the leads are children is people not knowing or writing kids how adults think kids interact and talk.
Yeah. This
show has the perfect way of portraying these. They feel like kids. They have their moments where they stand up and they try to act tough, like Fern, try to act tough and try to act like they know what's going on, and it leads to a great moment. Maybe one of my favorite moments of the season. Brilliant. At the end of this episode. But then there's also the moments like this, where they're just fucking around, playing with guns and just screwing around. I think one of them fires off a shot at one point.
Yeah, and of course that's Wim. Of course, Wim picks up the ridiculously huge blaster
and
just
one. It's and it's just it's perfect for Wim too. I gotta have the biggest one. It's just and he's got severe I need to be player one when I play video games at all times.
He's Jedi 1.
I'm having a mental breakdown. He is Jedi 1, and Neel is Jedi 2.
Or Neel is just constantly Jedi 2, yeah.
And then just little things during Hayna's talk with Neel. It's what do you have at home? It's well, on At Attin, we have this game called Slapball. I'm pretty good at that. It's just I love these kids so much.
Another Legends shout out, which is cool. I had no idea Slapball was a Legends. It began in Legends until today, which is just again really cool, so natural. That whole conversation with Neel and Hayna was just so heartwarming. It was a great spotlight for Neel, and it separated him out from the rest of the kids and showed how he's just. I love that he didn't engage with all the blaster fire play and stuff like that, because it shows how he's a very peaceful character.
He doesn't want to do any of it.
He just doesn't have any interest in it, and I think it was really interesting to show that perspective. And he's not morally righteous about it. He's very just humble, and it was just a really interesting conversation where she Hayna kind of says that it's weak, and he says, well, I don't know as much about this, but when talking about the conflict between the Troiks and the Hattans, and he's well, I just say I was sorry. And again, there is a naivety to what he's saying, but it really kind of sums up how ingrained people can become, how entrenched people can become in these divides, and how it just carries on and on over the years until people don't even know really understand what they're fighting about. It's always half remembered stuff, and it's represented so well there. It's really the kind of episode that the more you think about it, the more you kind of go, oh, they're really aiming for this kind of like, they're actually aiming at something kind of like profound in a way, kids, and that's great.
Yeah, no, it's just shout out Robert Timothy Smith. Like we've shout out all these kids so far. I love the way they're portraying him with like the mixture of like the on set acting and then also the puppetry. It looks
it's brilliant,
so nice, and I love him. I love him, Your Honor. I'm a proud father.
He's adorable. He really is.
I also just love that like the kind of meme shot that was released in the promo, him just sitting cross-legged, ended up being such a great scene. Like unironically, it was just like such a heartwarming, great character. That's what I love about this episode. Is you could say some could be like, oh, it's filler, and it's just like this has such great character-driven moments throughout the entirety of the episode that really like make you care more about these kids throughout the entirety of the episode. And I love that we get an episode for almost each of these kids throughout the show, where last week we got one for KB and Wim could say the first 2 episodes were his, and then Fern has very similar things, and she has we'll get to in a couple minutes. Great little moment at the end, which was maybe my favorite scene of the entire show until recently. It's just there's a lot to love, and it's such a good episode.
Yeah, like it's absolutely agreed. Like I think one of my favorite bits is like when like obviously the conflict like is sort of resolved because you get that moment where they're like marching and you don't know what's going to come the other way, and then it's just George.
Neel has this little moment of like leading the cause, which I loved, and
like he's got the little flag and stuff, and you really feel for him. But I so admire his bravery, because again, it's that kind of very kind of like kid thing of like he's scared, but he's pushing on anyway, and it's such a heartwarming thing to see that even though he's like easily the most scared out of all of them, he still demonstrates bravery by like pushing on despite the fear, and it's rewarded in a sense because of the fact that it's not the Troiks who are coming to meet him, it's
the
God.
Eopies. Yeah,
and so now I kind of have to ask a question. When he kind of started talking about the Troiks and oh no, they just gave me the Eopies, I worked out a deal with those credits. Was I the only one who was kind of going, wait, did you kill them? Did you just kill the Troiks and you took their stuff? Because
recent information, I think that very well might be the case.
Oh,
I don't think we're ever going to get the answer.
I know, and I love that we just have to wonder about it. We don't know, and it adds to the mystery and the danger around Jord of like.
It adds in the episode to like another running gag of like, God damn it, when it's just like you keep spending my dataries, man. What are you doing? But again, there's that mystery of surrounding Jod's character. Did he not? It's like at this point there's so much that leans towards like he's not necessarily trustworthy, but like he's gonna help the kids out at the end. And then there's also the bits where you're like, maybe run, maybe get away from him as fast as you possibly can.
I know, because you've got that moment where Neel hugs him, and it feels quite sweet, and like, oh look, he's becoming a dad. But then there's also that, like, again, that mystery of whether did he or did he not. It really just adds the edge and the danger and the mystery.
At the end of the day, Star Wars can't get away from their father finding or found parent tropes. It's everywhere. But at this point, I was like,
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I know. There's a mix of like, what's Jod actually doing? But then there's also mixes of like, get away from my fucking kids moment Jod has, which I think makes this episode so great. And we throughout the episode, there's been the hints of, let me just get the exact wording, the fallen sanctum that they travel to, but the general's like, no, it's not safe, and they kind of prove themselves here. Also, we got to talk about the reveal when Hayna and Neel are talking on the roof, and it's just a huge fucking gun. I just love Hayna's just like, oh, look at this cool thing, it's a giant gun, and Neel's just like, you're talking to the wrong guy, man. Yeah, like what am I gonna do with that?
That doesn't impress me, but what did impress me What did impress me was that final goodbye between the two. Because again, I kind of wanted Hayna to go with them. She was such a likable character. Like she had such a likability, and her personality was so distinct from like the four of them. Like because those four kids have their innocence as a fashion, and she's got a real hard bitten edge to her, which is the fact that she hasn't really been afforded the chance to be a kid. So she's even tougher than Fern in a lot of respects, but. I love how touched she is by Neel's like kindness and his peaceful attitude towards life. And the moment that she gives him the little peck on the cheek and she just runs away, does a flip, doesn't elaborate. I almost wanted the actor from like Homecoming to like just pop up and go, do a flip.
Someone edit that, please.
John Watts was like, I've got to, I've did the Spider-Man films. I've got to have another character do a flip. But yeah,
it's very. I'm making again. I gotta go. I'm going back to Avatar again. Like it just feels like those early episodes with Sokka and Suki, where like they have that little goodbye, and then you don't see her for a bit, and then she pops up next season, and becomes a major character. It also feels like Chapter 4 of The Mandalorian, which is kind of shocking that this wasn't Bryce's episode this season.
We are still waiting.
I was getting very big Omera and Mando vibes, and just the setting of the episode felt very sanctuary to me.
I can't wait to talk about Bryce's episode. I've finally caught up and watched the rest of the Jurassic World films recently, and I'm really hyped to like talk.
I'm sorry.
What happened?
You said I caught up on the Jurassic World films. I was like, I'm sorry.
I actually kind of like them.
I hear. Is it which one is it? Fallen Kingdom or Dominion? The one that people don't like, because I've only seen the first one.
And
I liked the first one. Fine.
The third one got negative reviews, and I think the second one like also had a bit of a mixed reception. But I having watched them now, like years after they were released, like I actually really dug them. I found like they're silly, they're very silly, and the third one is perhaps a little overstuffed, bringing the original three back. But I just had a lot of fun with it, and it's dinosaurs.
I'll get to it at some point because I am very curious about the new one coming out with ScarJo,
Scarlett Johansson.
And
Jonathan Bailey, that dude is having a great time at the movies.
Everywhere right now, man. He's doing it. He's great and Wicked.
One might even say he's dancing through life.
That's a thing that one might say. I've seen the movie now, so
we've got to stop because if we've both seen the movie. This will turn into a Wicked podcast if we continue because we can't stop saying things about that film. It is just movie heaven.
When we move to the Fallen Sanctum, we really get like the big payoff from last week's lore dump of we find out here are all the locations and coordinates of the different jewels of the Old Republic, and you're like, there's and then there's this one, and it all have very similar names, all look similar, and then they finally find At Attin, and what do you know? The coordinates are just completely destroyed, just ripped apart. I just love Julo's like, they're gone. Like I just love like the delivery there of someone beat them
of
to
course.
It. They've just been destroyed, and then you just get the bombshell. I did it, and just like I was like, oh my god, do we have surprise villain droid twist here?
Like that whole scene with like SM-33 again, it felt very piratey. Like we learn about Tak Renard, the pirate captain. Like we get a little bit more. I don't think he's named, is he, in this episode? Actually,
no. It's next week.
It's next week, yeah. But like we get more hints about like the pirate captain and stuff, and it's steeped in so much pirate stuff. Like it feels like just an innately pirate thing that he's like, the captain said told me another thing. If anyone else was to snoop around, rip them apart. And like, they're so ominous. Like SM-33 goes from being like this really jolly, like pirate, like cranky pirate droid to just suddenly growing like 5 feet and just like Nick Frost, man. Rip them apart.
So good. I love Jude Law. Maybe the best casting decision in this show was Nick Frost as 33.
So good.
Because he's so good. But I love in the scene preceding that, before we get to that scene, where they capture like shock, sadness, and also like humor at the same time, because it's like, I did it, and it's like, you did what? Like, I destroyed the coordinates. It's like, why'd you do that? It's like, do what? The coordinates, like, what coordinates? To At Attin. I can't say I remember no At Attin. It's like, stop saying that.
It's like, this is Finding Nemo all over again. Like, just keeps forgetting stuff. Yeah.
What coordinates? It's just like, he like immediately forgets what he just said. And then we get, which I've been talking about, this scene with Fern and Wim, where Fern kind of really breaks down for the first time, and we see her kind of just like taking the mask off, because up until this point she's just been like, oh, the tough guy, and her and Wim have been going at it like almost the entirety of the show. So to have that moment where she's just like, I don't know what to do, and Wim is like, well, you're the best, like, you're amazing, you always know what to do. I'm so just like, by that. My heart is so full right now. I love how we get more and more of these kids growing closer throughout this. And then episode 6, I'd say, is the culmination of like, oh no, like, this is, we're the friend group now. It's like, it's perfect. And again, I love all the kid actors. Ryan Kiera Armstrong is just, I don't know, maybe just the way the character's written, but she's just been unbelievable. In my opinion,
fantastic.
She, all the kids, the way that they're able to go toe to toe with Jude Law of all people in every scene is insane, and they got some serious talent. And I think that, like I said, this could be the Stranger Things for Star Wars in 2 ways. The first being the fact that it can be a similar show and go on for multiple seasons and be kind of like event TV like Stranger Things is, and having the same similar tones and stuff, and having child cast. Also, the fact that almost every kid from that show ended up becoming a big star, and I could see the same happening for Skeleton Crew, because these kids are great. Good. Like, there is no awkward child acting things that you see in a lot of stuff here. There's no like, oh, kid gloves that you need to work through with like performing with these. Like, they're going toe to toe with a legitimate, incredible actor, and having Nick Frost be the voice of this droid, and I'm assuming it being like a mix of puppet and CGI on set, and they're working off the droid so well. It doesn't feel stinted. It doesn't feel like there's any awkwardness. Like, God bless Jake Lloyd, and I love the Phantom Menace, and I love this. There's no like yippee like in the show or anything like that. Like, they're just like genuinely like great actors, and I think
this is fantastic.
This is like one of the first scenes where I was like, hold on, no, this show is like good.
Yeah,
like, I just wanted to highlight it because
it for sure
broke my heart.
Oh, it's one of my favorite scenes in the episode as well. Like just to see that vulnerability from Fern, and my favorite thing is that Neel is that Wim immediately adjusts. Like, he's been pretty confrontational with Fern the whole way through. He's kind of been jostling with her for like leader position. He kind of resents that she so capably steps into that. But really, he just lets the act drop in that moment. And he's like, well, actually, I actually really admire you. I think you're amazing the way you're able to take charge. Like, you saved us all from the pirate droid by literally claiming the ship and just taking the initiative with the pirate code. Like, she's a really interesting character through her courage, but I love that we got to see her be vulnerable and show that, she has a fear of failure. She fears not being good enough, not being tough enough in the situation. And it's just really interesting to see her grapple with that. And I love that she snaps at him at first, but what he says actually kind of clues her in of how to jog SM-33's memory of like, oh yeah, actually I'm the captain. I can override his programming. And it's
like, I do this with my droids at home all the time. It's like, wait a minute, boom, remember At Attin? It's like, I do remember At Attin. And then it goes so giant horror droid. And
I love the way the camera just like follows him, just to like from his has a point of view shot from his head, just to make him look even taller. It's great.
Turns into a horror movie for about 30 seconds, and you're just like, oh god. And I thought they might have ended the episode like with that, like what is going to happen? Like, is 33 the new villain? But then Neel has his moment of courage, which I adored. I loved it so much, where he just stands in front of him, and then as he's going, jaw just slides, disabled, click.
Action movie like dive, just like hits the button and he just collapses over poor Neel, and the little fellow, bless him, he just faints because he's just like he's just it's just like, again,
I think best ending of the entire series too. They're just like Neel. Oh, he fainted. Cut to black credits. Just like, oh my god. Shout out the Daniels, man.
That's great.
Ruled. I've made several comparisons to some things I really love. I think the tone was perfect. I think once they established the sister planets of At Attin, how they all work, all the different jewels of the Old Republic, I thought any weirdness that I had at the beginning of the episode was immediately just like, nope, I don't care. This is great. I thought Hayna was great. Her relationship with Neel was top tier. And that ending sequence, it was awesome.
It was great.
It was just like, that's where I was like, okay, no, Skeleton Crew I was having fun and I was really enjoying the show and these kids and these characters. But like episode 4 when I was like, nah, this show is just great. And it kept going. It keeps going that way from this point forward. So look forward to when we talk about the rest of the episodes we missed, because it's been great.
We get to discuss the other like Jude Law meme that's been going around.
No. Do we have to?
We kind of have to, otherwise.
I know, but I like being happy. Any last thoughts before we finish up this episode?
Pretty much just to echo what you said. I think the fourth episode, Can't Say I Remember No At Attin, was easily the best.
Wait,
I think
one more time.
Can't say I remember no At Attin.
There we go.
There it is. Yeah, had to do it one more time. I'd say that this was the best of the 4 so far. Like, I really loved, as you said, all the stuff with Hayna and like the suggestions of that conflict, and I loved her and Neel's dynamic, the way we got more development for Fern, the mystery around Jod, and like just the deepening of like stuff going on with the jewels of the Old Republic. It went a completely different direction from where I thought it was going, and there was like points where, again, like you said, I was worried that we were going for a time dilation thing, like the Interstellar or the terrible Lost in Space movie from the 90s. Like,
oh no.
Like, I half expected Gary Oldman to like crawl out of a tunnel or like CGI like travesty, but thankfully that did not happen. We got a really good character drama, like that built on the characters and developed the kids and showed that these child actors actually have a lot of talent here, that they can deliver the dramatic moments, the quieter emotional moments, just as much as the funny stuff. And that's great. And it really helps build your investment, as you said. And, obviously we've got the other episodes to talk about, but like, I'm so interested to see how the show's going to end. And if we get to see more of these kids going forward and how influential their characters are going to be over the rest of Star Wars, it's going to be, it's a good time to be a Star Wars fan.
Absolutely. I feel joy again. And it only goes up from here for these next couple episodes. Because shout out. We got some good stuff coming. But thanks again for tuning in for this episode as we begin our Skeleton Crew catch up. Like I said, if you missed the beginning of the episode, or if you let me just reiterate, we are going to be doing the rest of the series. We're going to be splitting it into 2 double-length episodes like we've done with this and our premiere episode. So next, in a couple days, we will get to episode 5 and 6. And then after the finale airs, we will get to episodes 7 and 8, the season, hopefully just season 1 finale of Skeleton Crew. So thank you for joining us. It's been fun being back here and getting back to talking about this show. And I can't wait to talk about the rest of these episodes. As for where everyone can find you, Donovan, why don't you start us off? Where can everyone find you?
So you can find me on Twitter still at Donovan Mead, where I will be sharing stuff, calling out the owner of the site for being, well, basically a huge dick, but also just tweeting stuff about Star Wars when I'm not calling out Elon Musk for being a huge arsehole. You can also find me on TikTok at Donovan McComish, Instagram at Donovan_McComish, Threads Donovan_McComish again, and Blue Sky at DonovanMcComish.bsky.social, where I am posting like more happier things. You can also there is also a story that I have written as part of the SWEU set of stories that were going on. We're in a bit of a hiatus at the moment. We're figuring it out, but I wrote a story back in 2022 that you could read called Scars of War. Our friend of the podcast, Jake, did a great piece of cover art on. Basically, it's about a clone trooper who abandoned the Republic after Order 66 and comes across a Jedi survivor 5 years later. So if you like Star Wars and pain, then hopefully this might be a story you'd like. It was a lot of fun to develop.
Absolutely. As for myself, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, at Starlight Andrew. You can also find me on Blue Sky, starlightandrew.bsky.social, where I'm posting pretty much the same thing I post on Twitter. I just started up my film journal for 2025. I'm doing that on Letterboxd,
yes.
Instagram, Twitter, and Blue Sky. So check that out.
Some cool stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Once I get more of a follower account on Blue Sky, I'll try to post more on there. I am getting slowly back to using Twitter a bit more, but I'm gonna try and use everything. So there's that. Also, want to shout out. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at For the Repub Pod, on Instagram and TikTok at For the Republic Pod, and on Blue Sky For the Republic Pod .bluesky.social. Got that up, so you can check that out. Our TikTok and Instagram, we've been trying to post more TikTok and Reels. Don has been editing some together. We have 2 up so far from our early days of the show. So some throwbacks there. I have one more that he's made that I have yet to post. Maybe I'll drop that this weekend. So check those out. We got more of those coming.
It's crazy that so much has happened since our last recording that we didn't even talk about Jeremy Allen White playing Rota.
Oh my God, I forgot. It's crazy. I thought that was before we recorded. I literally
it's so weird.
I think that happened like a day after we recorded, like it always does.
It did.
I think like the day after we recorded that Skeleton Crew episode, the Rota news dropped. I'm like, oh God damn it. But we did put together a funny short about us literally talking about, hey, how could Rota return when we did the Clone Wars movie?
It's lovely full circle
March
moment.
Of 2022. Full circle. Here we go. I also just want to thank everyone. Christmas 2024 officially marked 3 years since I first announced this little show. March will be our 3-year anniversary since our first episode when we talked about the Clone Wars movie, and clearly we've gotten so far deep into Clone Wars so far, all one season and 3 episodes of season 2.
Maybe we'll mark the anniversary by like finally talking
about bounty hunters. Yeah, once we get through Skeleton Crew, we'll definitely get back to that. I just want to thank you. You know, we're on year 3 of the show. It's crazy to me how much we've made this grow since then, and really established a little group of friends and community through this. So I just want to thank you. Once we get back on our feet, 2025 is going to be a fun one. So look forward to the remainder of our Skeleton Crew coverage. And also, when we get that, we'll have our yearly favorite Star Wars of 2024 episode coming out as well. And then we'll get back into that little show called The Clone Wars. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you in a couple days for our continued coverage of Skeleton Crew. And until next time, may the Force be with you. Always.
Can't say I remember no At Attin.